Hi, welcome to the show. Over the past 6 years, we focused on a bunch of truancy, from fines to the causes. Actually, we're not focused on the fines. We'll do that next time. From courts to skipping class during the pandemic. But the question is, what would we do without those truancy laws and the law that said you're required to go to school? What would happen? Here's my take on this. If we made school optional for all kids, what would happen is all the kids would be excited to go to school on one side, and on the other side, the kids would be not staying at home watching TV, playing video games, hanging out with their friends. No, they're out there breaking into houses, breaking into cars, robbing banks, going, "Give me all your money!" Something like that. That's raising what's called juvenile delinquency. And the actual definition of juvenile delinquency goes as stands: the habitual committing of criminal acts or offenses by a young person, especially one below the age at which the ordinary criminal prosecution is possible. That's the actual definition of juvenile delinquency. And the age of maturity is at the age of 18. However, if you're not 18, so let's say you're 16 and you assaulted a teacher, you're going to be charged as a juvenile. But in Ethan Crumley's case, he was charged as an adult for his role in that school shooting. And we'll get to him in a minute. But if you're under 18, you are a juvenile, like I talked about. Zach's case, we focused on Zach when he was accused of Zoom bombing him and another juvenile. He lived out of Connecticut, New Jersey. In Connecticut, they have a law that says you cannot be talking, that juveniles are prohibited from talking to police. Sounds fair. But he knew what he did was wrong, because if you would have Googled Zoom bombing 2 years ago and look at what the FBI put out, you know exactly what I talked about. Or if you were to look back at one of my episodes where I talked about this, you know exactly what goes on when we talk about this kind of crap. Because this shows more than telling the story. It's dealing with the issue, going deeper into the issue, and trying to help you by finding solutions. So the solution I have when kids are being truant is like I talked about. We have to get the parents involved. The parent has a duty and the responsibility to make sure the child goes to school. The child has a duty to make sure that he or she goes to school every day. In Texas, back in 2011, before the new law changed back in 2015, 10 absences means you can be charged with truancy. But back in 2015, lawmakers decided to change that to where you would not be charged with 10 absences. You're still required to go to school. The age has changed up to 19 years of age. And so really, the laws did little change. So therefore, what you're left with is being juvenile delinquency. And there are some examples of this. The three types of delinquency are this: delinquency, criminal behavior, and status offenses. It includes crimes committed by the minors, which are dealt with by juvenile courts and the justice system. An example of this behavior: example of juvenile delinquents or juvenile offenders commit crimes ranging from status offenses such as truancy, which is the first offense, violating curfew or underage drinking and smoking, to more serious offenses or categorized by property crimes, violent crimes, sexual offenses, and cyber crimes. As someone who's been doing this 6 years, I can tell you the child's first offense is truancy. Then it goes to things like shoplifting, assault, stealing, possession of drugs. It gets bigger and bigger. The cause of this: family characteristics such as poor parenting skills, family size, home discord, child maltreatment, and antisocial parents are the risk factors linked to juvenile delinquency. Those are linked. So really, when you're looking at something like this, the poor parenting skills, I mean, if you're a parent with poor parenting skills, you need to attend parenting classes. Family size. Now, the family size could be like big children when you're dealing with one person who just broke into our store to get food. The four main types of this: crimes against property, vagabondage, sexual misdemeanors, and juvenile delinquency. The four factors of this, a large number of individual factors and characteristics have been associated with the development of juvenile delinquency. These factors include age, gender, complications during pregnancy and delivery, impulsivity, aggressiveness, and substance use, meaning substance use of drugs and alcohol. How can we prevent this from happening again? The most preventive programs of juvenile delinquency prevention share the following key components: education, recreation, community involvement, parental and infancy visitation by nurses, parent-child interaction training program, bullying prevention program, and prevention programs within the juvenile justice system. We have what we have are juvenile detention centers where we can therapy all the kids right in those juvenile detention centers. And once those therapies are put in, maybe, just maybe, those people that are juveniles can go back to their normal lives and maybe become honorable members of our community. So how can we prevent this? Education is just very important. Like we said before, we need to make sure our kids go to school, not break the law, commit crimes, do drugs, whatever. Kids need to become good members of the community when they all grow up. That's the whole key here is education. Still ahead, do you know how fresh the stuff you buy, beef, pork, chicken, fish? Well, hidden cameras found some hidden date dots that you out there could not find. John Larson with the dating game. But coming up next, this state trooper has used deadly force 4 times and killed 4 people. So why is he not turning in his badge or his gun? Lisa Guerrero with deadly force gotten away with. Stay with us. Can you imagine your friend using deadly force? Just imagine this. Your friend is a cop, and that cop used deadly force not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times. This state trooper killed these 4 people. And it's what happened next. After the first time, he didn't get fired. Second time, he didn't get fired. Third time, he didn't get fired. Fourth time, he's still not fired. Could there be changes to this? You're about to see dash cam videos that would show that the 4th person right here got shot at by the back of the car. And you're also going to meet one of the victim's parents who say he should just turn in his badge and gun. But wait till you see what happens when Inside Edition caught up with him. Here's Lisa Guerrero.
In a crisis, cops are often faced with the difficult decision of using deadly force. But today, this state trooper is under fire for his use of deadly force. Not once or twice, but 4 different times.
Shots fired. Send EMS.
Yes, it's true. Pennsylvania trooper Jay Splain has shot and killed 4 people in the line of duty since 2007. Autumn Krause says she was appalled to find out her brother, Andy Dwanchak, was the 4th fatality.
This guy should not have still been employed with a weapon.
Prior to her brother's death in 2021, Splain also fatally shot Joseph Rodkowicz, Charity Tome, and Anthony Ardo. This dashcam video obtained by Inside Edition shows the dramatic moment Splain shoots at Anthony Ardo's car, killing him.
They got right out of their cars and they just started shooting. They didn't even give him a chance.
Anthony Ardo's sister, father, and stepmom say they struggle to make sense of what they call senseless killings. What was your reaction when you found out that Trooper Splain has shot and killed 3 other people?
After 2, don't you say, oh, wait a minute here. It should have stopped after the second one, not 3 and not 4.
Trooper Splain was cleared in all 4 shootings. He works out of this post behind me and patrols the mostly rural roads around Jonestown, Pennsylvania, about 2 hours outside of Philadelphia, an area where records show fatal state police shootings are rare. Family members acknowledge all 4 of the deceased were often troubled, used drugs, and suffered from mental illness. Attorneys Matthew Weisberg and Anthony DiGiacomo represent the Ardos in a lawsuit.
I'm blown away that after 4 killings, this officer is still in the field.
When we tried to speak to Trooper Splain,
"Stay in the car. Sit down."
he called in backup, and we got pulled over. He's in the car behind us right now. He has our IDs. We've identified ourselves as journalists, but we've been told not to get out of the car. This trooper questioned us, but we also had some questions for him. Sir, we're just trying to talk to Trooper Splain.
He's not here, not available.
The families of his shooting victims have questions for him, sir.
He asked me to pass along that he has nothing to say to you now or ever.
The district attorney who cleared Trooper Splain in the 2 most recent shootings is actually married to a Pennsylvania state trooper.
With the current DA, there's absolutely a conflict of interest.
We tried to speak to Lebanon County District Attorney Pierre Hess-Graf. Is it a conflict of interest for you to have been investigating those deaths?
I have no comment to any of this.
Is he fit for duty after not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 separate shooting deaths, ma'am?
I have no comment. You can read our report.
In your opinion, should Officer Splain still have a badge anymore?
Absolutely not.
No, not at all.
He should turn his badge in.
Don't move!
The DA says she followed her office's conflict of interest policy and that her trooper husband played no role in the investigation. Meantime, the family of Anthony Ardo has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Trooper Splain, who denies any wrongdoing.
You know, there's an old saying, the mouth can lie, but the brain can't. If you weren't involved in this, your brain knows what happened. You may say, no, I wasn't involved in this, it happened. But your brain remembers, your brain has memories. And those memories are stored in your brain. But I got a lot to say about this. But not a lot, because we got to move on here. But it seems to me the district attorney did not just say, we're married, you should not be doing this, so either you stop doing this, or I'm gonna fire you, or I'm gonna put you in jail. And he was been like, no, please, I'll stop, please, don't put me in jail, please, I won't ever do it again, please, I won't do it again, I won't, please. You get the picture here? But if he wasn't married, that would never happen. But now they're married, I guess the district attorney needs to be fired or just voted out when the election isn't even in town. It's all run by the government. So these two get their asses divorced or find a situation. Not just say, oh, well, he had no part in this, so I think he should be removed. That was just 1, 2, 3, 4. Screw you. So, changes got to be made. And there ain't no way you go to sign out here. After watching this 2 times, I'm very stunned he's back. He's still in the force. And they have a case about this. So we hope it does go to court. We hope it does. Well, next. Do you know how fresh the food that you buy is? Dateline did something that no other grocery store wanted you to know. An investigation then led to one store saying, we don't want you publicizing our food. Stay with us. When I go to a grocery store, I expect that the food I buy, beef, pork, chicken, fish, I expect that those 4 things I buy are fresh. And we all trust those sell-by dates. What that means is, it has to be fresh by its sell-by date. If it's not being sold by its sell-by date, then it's not fresh. So how can you be certain that the meat and fish that you buy is safe? Well, back in May of 2002, if you watched this Dateline report, you may have realized what had happened. And it may change the way how you would buy things fresh. And coming up, and I watched this several times, and As a fast food employee, I know about those expiration dates that we all use. I'm not going to mention because I don't want to put them on the spot here, but here's John Larson with a hidden camera investigation.
America's grocery stores are among the most abundant food markets in the world.
We cut fresh meat here every day. Every day fresh.
We rely on stores to tell us how fresh their meat, poultry, and fish are, trusting those tiny dates, computer programmed and carefully stamped on every package, the sell-by dates. What do you think the date means?
It's supposed to mean sell by, it's only fresh too.
You have to sell it by that day.
That's right, and if it's not out of the store, then it should definitely be tossed or something.
Well, actually, according to the USDA, we can rely on those dates to tell us when to freeze meat or throw it away. 3 to 5 days after the date runs out for beef and pork, 1 or 2 days for chicken.
You get somebody sick, you know, the date's wrong and the meat might be going bad.
So you think you know how fresh meat is, but do you? What if what appears to be a promise is really a lie? Everybody behind the counter knows this?
Pretty much. I don't know of anyone who don't know it.
What began as a tip turned into a 5-month Dateline hidden camera investigation into a practice with little or no regulation. We investigated stores owned by 7 of the largest grocery chains in the nation, which operate more than 7,000 stores in nearly every state, to find out whether grocery stores are telling the truth about the meat they sell. Our investigation began with this man, Jim Morrison, a former bond salesman who tried to blow the whistle on what he called a massive consumer fraud.
I just don't like big companies that rip off the little guy. I just got a problem with that.
The rip-off, he says, has to do with those tiny numbers, the sell-by dates. Most meat and fish come into stores in bulk, where employees cut and package it. And because the clock is always ticking, they say they generally give it around 3 days to sell before throwing it away. But Morrison says during trips to grocery stores near Jupiter, Florida 7 years ago,
July 4th.
he realized the stores were secretly changing the sell-by dates on packages of meat to lengthen their shelf life.
Extended it to July 11th.
His discovery became a crusade, some might say an obsession. For 2 years, he videotaped and documented evidence, investigating several chains, but focusing especially on stores owned by Winn-Dixie, which operates more than 1,000 stores in 14 southern states.
Every store that I visited had this scam going on.
Morrison quickly became a thorn in Winn-Dixie's side, even demanding the company hire him to inspect their stores. But not only did Winn-Dixie deny Morrison's allegations, the company accused him of extortion and fabricating the evidence. So they're now saying he hasn't detected a problem, he is the problem.
They said that I was smuggling tampered and spoiled products and placed them on the shelves of these companies.
Had you?
Not once.
But in December of 1997, Winn-Dixie helped convince the government that Morrison was concocting a scheme to defraud Winn-Dixie. The FBI raided his home, taking his notes and tapes.
There never should have been one FBI agent anywhere near my house. Period.
No charges were ever filed against Jim Morrison, and the FBI closed the case. But it all made us wonder, what about the things he had claimed? Evidence of a scam, selling out-of-date meat to the public. Was it happening at Winn-Dixie or any other stores? We decided to set out on our own, to go undercover, to find out for ourselves. First, we needed a way to track large amounts of meat out for sale, and it had to be foolproof. We came up with a way to secretly mark the packages of meat, a small metal bar with these tiny numbers. We wore the bar like a splint on our finger, and marked the bottom of the trays by imprinting, pressing numbers into the styrofoam without breaking the plastic wrap. For example, if a steak has a sell-by date of May 7th, like this one, we'd impress a small 07 on the tray. If anyone changed the date on the label but kept the original tray, we'd know it. And then we would shop just like you do, except sometimes to explain why we were spending so much time in the meat department, we'd suggest we were thinking of starting a catering business, and we'd ask questions.
Okay,
So do you ever change the date, like once it's on there?
No, we can't. That's we got cameras watching this doing things like that.
Really?
And this computer runs straight up to the main office.
Wow.
Something like that, you can get fired. Cameras watching him. What he didn't know was that Dateline's hidden cameras were rolling too, as we investigated stores across the country to see who was telling the truth.
Do you change the date?
Oh, no, never change the date.
Coming up next, the investigation begins. Are all stores telling the truth? Or covering up, sweeping everything under the carpet? John Larson continues this investigation. Stay with us. Now new developments into Oxford. Oxford High shooter's parents fight the manslaughter charge in the appeals court. Writing to Ethan Crumley's journal capture why prosecutors feel his parents should be held criminally liable for the deaths of 4 Oxford High students. Prosecutors argue that the parents failed to intervene when their son showed signs of mental illness and violent tendencies. Further, they contributed to the eventual attack by giving their son access to the gun he eventually used in the attack. This journal lecture, along with other evidence indicating the parents were instrumental in helping their son obtain a murder weapon, are included in a brief filed by Oxford County Assistant Prosecutor Joseph J. Shada in the State Court of Appeals January 18th. Prosecutors are asking the court to uphold 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Each carry a maximum of sentence of 15 years in prison. So 15 times 3. So if we go 3 mans, so use our calculator here for this. So you have you have 4 charges. You multiply that by 15. That equals 60 years in jail each. 60 years in jail each. Now, the prosecutors could not do that, but if they did, adding up all those charges, that's 60 years in jail. The parents remain in jail since their arrest days after the shooting. The trial was scheduled to begin last Tuesday, but it was delayed due to that appeal. Attorneys from the parents have asked the courts to overturn the George County District Judge Julie Nicholson's February 24th decision to bind the parents' case over to the Oakland County Circuit Court for trial. Lots of requests have happened. But Ethan Crumley pleaded guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder, a count of terrorism causing death, 7 counts of assault with intent to murder, and 12 counts of felony use of firearm on October 24th. If convicted, Ethan Crumley could face life in prison. We'll keep looking into this and give you future references on a future Give Me a Break.
Coming up, Dateline goes undercover into supermarkets to find out whether stores tell the truth about the meat they sell.
Do you change the date?
Oh, no, never change the date.
But our own secret coding device showed the dates were changed.
It's about making money.
Does it also risk making you sick?
Cooking kills bacteria.
But does it always? We had some of the redated food tested by an expert.
Should anybody be eating that fish?
There's no circumstance that you can cook out 230 million bacteria.
As our hidden camera investigation, The Dating Game, a Dateline special, continues.
Returning now to our story, you've heard one side of the story of one former detective who investigated Winn-Dixie's fresh food. Now we're going to go into other stores. Now the investigation starts to go into other stores to where the question is, how fresh is the food that we buy? Get ready to be stunned as those hidden numbers, looking like splinters, are pressed in and stores are left changing the date. Once again, here's John Larson.
We went undercover, checking Winn-Dixie stores in Dallas and Atlanta. like any other shopper, but we were busy leaving our small imprints behind, marks we could check later. As our hidden cameras rolled in Atlanta, a Winn-Dixie employee who worked behind the meat counter told us they never changed the sell-by date.
Do you ever change the date, or does the date always stay the same?
No, the date stays the same.
Sell-by dates are not required by law. They're more of a good faith promise of freshness. And Winn-Dixie has a strict policy on sell-by dates. It will not tolerate the intentional selling of merchandise after the original sell-by date. So, is the store always living up to its promise? After a few days of marking packages in Atlanta, we came back to check for our marks and found this.
Beef ribeye, steak.
A steak dated February 3rd. But when we turned it over, there was our imprint, our January 30 mark still visible. Someone had added 4 more days and put it back out for sale.
1, 2, 3, 4.
In Dallas, we found more of the same. Look at this steak. Here's our mark showing it was dated the 11th. Its new sell-by date? Someone added 4 more days, giving it till the 15th. And without our marks, we would have never known what employees were telling us wasn't true. For example, we knew these ribs went out of date on the 6th, yesterday.
I'm marking down because they're going to go out of date.
So tomorrow they go out of date?
Yeah, the 8th.
Just to make sure someone wasn't reusing styrofoam trays, we also compared our pictures of the meat. Even though they had new labels, we could double check to see that the fat, the marbling, matched. But just how dangerous is meat that isn't fresh? Can it make you sick? Well, it turns out that one simple question is both up for debate and a touchy subject.
The dates do not have anything to do with safety.
Jill Hollingsworth, a spokesperson for the Food Marketing Institute, a trade association for grocery stores, says meat, poultry, and fish are safe, regardless of their sell-by dates, as long as they're cooked properly.
Cooking products thoroughly to the required temperatures will destroy all the harmful bacteria that could make a person sick.
They're playing Russian roulette.
Ron Schnitzer is a microbiologist who some grocery stores themselves rely on to test their food. He says although expired sell-by dates do not mean the meat is bad, bacteria is growing, sometimes harmful bacteria, like Salmonella, Listeria, and Staph aureus, and that is a risky game.
Cooking will definitely remove the harmful bacteria, the pathogens, if they're there in low numbers. If they're there in high numbers, what guarantee do we have that we're actually going to get rid of them?
Cooking will kill the harmful bacteria that can cause illness.
Can you guarantee that?
The cooking temperatures that are
Can you guarantee that?
The cooking temperatures that are recommended for consumers are tested and designed and recommended by the federal government because they were specifically established as the temperatures that kill all of the harmful bacteria.
Is that a yes?
Cooking kills bacteria.
But scientists tell us some bacteria give off toxins that are resistant to cooking, poisons that can make you sick. Although no one knows how many illnesses are attributable to meat, the Centers for Disease Control estimates 5,000 Americans die every year from food poisoning from all food sources, and 76 million of us get sick. But because it can take days for a foodborne illness to show up, tracking it back to its source is almost impossible.
How do you remember what you ate 48 hours ago, or even worse, 72 hours ago?
So we asked the microbiologist to run a test for us. We had seen something odd about some hams at a Winn-Dixie store in Dallas. All the Winn-Dixie labels were placed in exactly the same place, turned exactly the same way. The sell-by date was in March, but we checked underneath. The original sell-by date was January 31st. Someone had added 38 days. So we bought one, packed it in dry ice, rushed it overnight to Schnitzer's laboratory, and asked him to measure the amount of bacteria on it.
When you get above 3 million, you've got a lot of bacteria.
And this was what?
19 million.
6 times the level at which meat is spoiling and risk increasing, according to Schnitzer. Not exactly the ham we were promised back in the store.
Are they fresh?
Yeah, we just had abundance of them with the low salt. Not a lot of people like the low salt. Actually, it's a good ham.
So even though it's got too much bacteria, if you go home and cook that ham, are you going to get sick?
For the bulk of the population, no. There's probably very little likelihood you're going to get ill. But are you going to feed this to a young individual? Are you going to feed this to an immunocompromised individual? They could become ill.
And we did more testing. At another store in Dallas, we tracked this fish out for sale for 6 days. Its bacterial count? 230 million.
Under any circumstances, should anybody be eating that fish?
There is no circumstance that you can cook out 230 million bacteria. I'm not willing to take the risk that one pathogen isn't going to survive.
Altogether at Winn-Dixie, not including the fish, this is what we found. 27 examples of redated meat in 6 out of the 7 stores we checked. So were some employees breaking company rules, risking their jobs? If so, why? This man thinks he knows.
I moved to Tallahassee, and that's the first job I applied for.
In 1997, Robert Becker was only 22 years old when he was hired as a meat cutter for Winn-Dixie. In the 6 months he worked there, Becker says workers in his department routinely added days to expiring packages of meat by changing the sell-by dates.
If it's not about selling it by this date, then what's it about?
It's about making money.
Becker says the order to change sell-by dates came from the manager of his department, who Becker says told him got bonuses based on how profitable the meat department was.
He would come in and say, we're not doing something right because my bonuses are crap. And we need to make changes in here. And his changes were to sell everything possible.
Becker says he even saw his boss rooting through the bone barrel, the garbage pail for the meat department, looking for pieces he could grind into hamburger.
He would take it out, trim it off, weigh it, and say, this is what you're throwing away. Money.
And Dateline learned that Robert Becker was not alone.
It was common knowledge what took place.
In Alabama, another former Winn-Dixie meat cutter, who asked not to be identified, told us that while he was taught the right way to handle meat in Winn-Dixie's training school, the tune quickly changed when he reported to work.
Who's teaching you how to rewrap, redate, essentially fool the public?
Everybody learns new coming in, so somebody essentially is going to teach you, be that a market manager or another experienced meat cutter.
Was this just one store where you noticed this?
No, I worked in 4 stores for this time.
So all 4 market managers were essentially asking you to rewrap, redate, and change the dates.
Sure, there's nothing different from market to market.
Perhaps more disturbing, he told us that Dateline was likely missing most of the rewrapped out-of-date meat, because the meat usually comes back out for sale not in the same tray so we could track it, but in different trays, in different forms.
I can take a roast and cut it into steaks, make more money, and you'd never know.
And when aging chicken started to smell bad, he says they'd just take the skins off and charge more.
We take them to the back, skin them, then place them in a tray. Then sure, you're going to get more per pound for them.
Grocery stores operate on razor-thin profit margins. Last year, Winn-Dixie reported making less than 0.5% profit. And there's added pressure in the meat and fish departments where products are perishable and timing is everything.
Did you ever tell the public, listen, this is what we're doing here, we're actually rewrapping, redating?
No.
I mean, it's almost like the industry's dirty little secret.
Yep.
Is it the industry's dirty little secret? Do other supermarket chains do the same thing? We decided to expand our investigation to include 6 more of the largest supermarket chains in the nation, including one store that did not want you to see what we found.
Yep. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not going to sell us your food? No. Not with you guys doing work.
Those questions will be answered along with the expanded investigation when we return. Stay with us. So far, what we've showed you was meat that was being tested with bacteria count. Now the expanded investigation into stores that are doing the same thing, including one store that doesn't want you to know. Here again, John Larson.
So far, we had found redating of fresh products at almost every Winn-Dixie store we had checked. But were other stores across the nation doing the same thing? We expanded our investigation to include 6 more of the biggest, most recognizable names in the grocery business: Kroger, Publix, A&P, Safeway, Albertsons, and Pathmark, which together run thousands of stores in nearly every state. We would investigate a number of stores owned by each company and spend about a week in each store. How would they do? First stop, Albertsons, with 1,700 stores in cities like Los Angeles, Albuquerque, and Salt Lake City. We chose 6 stores in Dallas and Denver, including this upscale Denver store, complete with its own dry cleaning, Starbucks, and pet care center. Just like we had at Winn-Dixie, we imprinted the bottom of trays, tracking about 30 packages a day per store. And like Winn-Dixie, Albertsons has a strict policy that prohibits the extension or alteration of any sell-by dates. But it wasn't long before rewraps of meat with expired sell-by dates began showing up at Albertsons too. The date on these pork chops is March 16th, but look on the side. We found our imprint showing they used to be dated the 13th.
Oh yeah, I do see it.
We found 16 packages of redated meat in this store alone.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
No. The manager of the meat department was friendly.
I have a question about dates.
But we wondered, was he completely unaware of what was going on in his own department, or was he telling us something that wasn't true?
So did you ever change the dates?
No.
It's on the side.
At another Denver Albertsons, we found an unusually clever way to secretly change dates.
What are you labeled?
New labels dated the 17th, covering up old dates that said the 15th, placed so carefully we almost missed them.
Did you change the date?
Oh, no, never changed the date.
At another Denver Albertsons, this manager told us he had heard about redating, but he'd never do it.
I know 16 guys that have been fired for that.
Really? Why would they do it?
Why would they do that? Because we have gross profit numbers that we have to hit out of here, and everybody gets all paranoid. That's a $3 package, and I'm not going to lose my job for $3.
Yet in his department alone, we found 7 redated packages.
Never mess with dates.
In Dallas, we found more of the same. Expiring sell-by dates with new dates added. Redated lamb and redated chicken, both given 2 more days to sell. Redated beef given 3 extra days. Redated pork given 4. And remember the former meat worker warning us that most redating would be impossible to track because it included replacing old trays? Look at this. At one Dallas Albertsons, we imprinted a beef skirt steak in a yellow tray. When we came back the next day, we couldn't find it, but we did find a beef skirt steak in a black tray that was exactly the same weight and price of the steak in the yellow tray. And this steak was dated 5 days later. Was it the same meat? We queued up our pictures before and after, and they matched. It was the same steak. So in all, what did we find at Albertsons? We found rewrapping and redating in all 6 stores we checked. A total of 48 packages. Next, we tried Publix, which owns nearly 700 stores in cities like Miami, Orlando, and Tampa. We visited 8 stores in Atlanta and Columbia, South Carolina. In 4 of the stores, we found no redating at all. Among the other 4, we found only 8 redated products, like this Cajun catfish given 3 more days to sell. Compared to Winn-Dixie and Albertsons, much less redating at Publix. Next up, Safeway, which owns 1,600 stores in cities like Seattle and Washington, D.C. Safeway's policy on changing the sell-by date specifically prohibits employees from changing the package date. A Safeway meat manager in Denver.
Do you ever change the date?
That's we got cameras watching us doing things like that. Really? And this computer runs straight up to the main office.
Wow.
Something like that, you can get fired.
But in 1 week, we found 15 packages of redated meat in this manager's department. Almost all was extending the sell-by date by 4 days.
That says 18.
At another Denver Safeway, we had just been there a few days marking packages.
This is 1, 2.
When the store manager stopped us and asked if we were taking pictures of the meat.
Where are you with? What are you doing it for?
Well, actually, we're with NBC News.
We told him we were doing a story about redating meat.
This isn't redated.
Now, you would think a store manager would want to know if someone in his meat department was selling meat past its sell-by date. But all he wanted from us was our cameras and videotape.
Take your camera in the film?
Oh, no, you can't take up propaganda. You can't do that.
Well, you can have a store then.
Can you have to do it?
You driving it?
Yeah, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're not going to sell us some food? No. Not with you guys doing work.
But we still had our videotapes, which later showed someone had rewrapped and added days to at least 4 pieces of meat. These country-style ribs started off dated the 15th, but here they are redated the 16th. Altogether, this is what we found at Safeway. 21 rewrapped, redated packages in all 3 Safeways we checked. On to 3 more chains. Kroger, the largest chain in the country, with 2,400 stores in cities like Detroit, Indianapolis, and Cincinnati. A&P, with 800 stores in cities like New Orleans, Hartford, Connecticut, and the suburbs of New Jersey. And Pathmark, with 138 stores in cities like Philadelphia and Wilmington, Delaware. Their policies seem clear. Kroger strictly prohibits the redating of any products, including fresh meat and seafood. A&P? Well, here's an A&P meat manager in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Right, so you're not allowed to rewrap or anything?
No, we have to take it out.
And the same for Pathmark, at least according to these Pathmark meat managers.
Did you change the date?
No, we need a date on it.
Change the date?
There's the same date on it.
And yet we found rewrapped meat with days added in every single Kroger, A&P, and Pathmark store that we checked. At Kroger in Columbia, South Carolina, we found redated crab cakes, a Kroger date placed right over the Packers date. In all, 26 packages of redated pork, seafood, and beef at 3 out of the 3 Kroger stores we checked. At A&P in New Jersey, we found 5 packages of veal. Our marks showed they were first dated February 26th. The new date? March 5th. They'd all been given an extra 7 days to sell. All added up at A&P? 33 redated pieces of beef, pork, and chicken in 3 out of the 3 A&P stores we checked. At Pathmark, also in New Jersey, we found this top-of-the-line all-natural steak for almost $10 a pound, redated for 2 more days. In all, 38 redated packages of beef, pork, and fish in 3 out of the 3 Pathmark stores we checked. But there was something different we found at Pathmark. A meat worker who, unlike anyone else we talked to, appeared to tell us the truth.
Do they put the same date on it when they...
No, it'd be another day.
Oh, so they rewrap it and they put another date?
Yeah.
But how would you know...
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I see.
See, sometimes they can fool anybody with math.
And then we told him how others in his department had said they don't redate.
You spoke to someone who was like, oh, we don't change dates and stuff. And...
Well,
why would he say that?
that's what they say. I work that way, you know what I'm saying? Just taking our word.
Okay.
So our grand total? Altogether, we spent 46 days inside stores at 7 grocery store chains, 33 different stores, where we found redating in 28, 201 packages in all, with sell-by dates on fresh meat and fish extended from 1 to 7 days. It was time to ask the meat managers, the men who promised us it never happens in their stores, to explain.
17 pieces of meat in your department are rewrapped and days are added to the expiration date. How is that?
So will they confess? John Larson continues the dating game when we come back. Stay with us. Well, we're out of time, but we're going to continue this investigation on Monday. Now, will the managers confess that they did the wrong thing? And what's going to happen when the head of the food website sits down with Dateline and doesn't want to hear about what happened in those stores? You'll be amazed by what happened. Also coming up next week, you can't say that. What's happening to free speech? That's all for this edition of Give Me a Break Saturday going to Sunday. We'll see you again for Give Me a Break Monday. And for all of us here at YouTube, I hope you had a great day. Have a good night.